Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm taking this beaded distressed lantern, open lantern, and that's going to be my base. And you'll see that the bottom there is metal, and so I am going to just take and build my base down at the bottom. Now, this design, you can actually pull this out and change it up if you want to. You'll see I'm using a Lazy Susan here to just spin it on, and you need some foam, floral foam. Use the thick brick kind, not the soft foam, because once you start using glue, it's not going to be good. So just use the hard foam. I used about a 6 by 6 inch block that I cut down, and we are going to go ahead and start putting some glue on it, and we will put it in there. Don't forget your snips. You're going to definitely need those. You're going to need a glue gun. That's optional, of course, and I have a hot glue skillet that I'm going to use. In addition to that, I've picked out some florals. So here is my selection for this project. I am going to use some mossy green filler, some cream and taupe tulips, some red ranunculus. That is a beige fallish protea, and then some sunflowers, and then some filler. So that's a Veronica spike and just some other filler I got from Deco Exchange. I'm going to use a white pumpkin and one of these little plastic skeletons that I got. And then I also pulled out this really cute black raven / crow because I really like them for Halloween. So we're going to use that. And I pulled a couple of ribbons that will match our project. Really, that's all we're going to use. That's all the things that you're going to need for this project. All right, so we are going to go ahead and start gluing our base down. I'm just dipping in some glue and putting it there on the base. You can do this many ways. You can use your hot glue gun if you want to, but mine wasn't warmed up yet, so I went ahead and went this route. I'm just going to stick that in the center. And you'll see that I have an extra piece of gaps and crack right there. And I really wanted to elevate my skeleton just a little bit so that he's not sunk down in at the bottom of the base. So I'm going to take a little piece of scrap gaps and cracks, and I'll put him on that. And of course, I forgot, you do need some Spanish moss to put around your floral foam, which means then you're going to need some U-pins or floral pins to stick your moss into your base. So I'm going to use these little U-pins. I got those at Hobby Lobby. And you'll see I'm just looking at this piece of gaps and cracks to see if where I want to put it, how I want to place it. It's kind of wobbly because it's rounded on the bottom. But I'm just pulling him out to take a look, see how I want him in this lantern, in this design. And you can really do whatever you want to with your skeleton. You don't have to use a skeleton. You can use a witch. You can, use anything that you want to here. Again, I'm just seeing how I'm going to want to place him in there. Now, because that is a little wobbly on the bottom, I'm going to take my utility knife and I'm going to cut that bottom out so that it sits smoother and flat against the floral foam. So I'm just cutting out a little circle here. Just don't cut yourself. Okay, you're going to see I'm going to dip it in the glue, get a little bit of glue on the bottom of it, and then I'm just going to plop that right down on top of the floral foam. And then we'll go in and we'll start covering this up with the Spanish moss. Now you can use green moss, you can use brown moss, but you definitely want to cover up your mechanics. You don't have to completely cover it with moss because your flowers and your fillers are going to act as a camouflage as well. But you are going to want to cover around the sides and cover up that gaps and cracks. So we're going to do that now. All right, while we're putting our moss on, I have a question for you. Do you struggle with putting colors together, especially for fall designs? I know that spring is pretty easy. You've got all the pastels and the pinks and blues and so on and so forth, but do you struggle with fall colors, knowing what's on trend and what looks good and what would look good in your design, or what room of your home would look good with fall colors? Well, I have a fall color guide that is in my shop, and I show you some trending color pairings, and I provide you with the rooms they would look really great in, along with what type of a wreath or swag or a garland or a centerpiece would look good in those colors. And I also even give you tips on what items to decorate with, especially for fall, like skeletons or pumpkins or so on and so forth like that. I think I even threw in some gold trim things. So if you struggle with fall colors and you want some help, please check out my shop and check out my fall color combo guide. I've put a link in the description of this video that will take you right to the guide if you're interested. Okay, so we're just putting in our last pins here, and I'll show you what it looks like, and you'll see that it's not completely covered, but you can see some of the green foam right there. But you see I covered the sides and I covered the gaps and cracks. And the one thing I would say as a tip, you don't want to use glue in your U-pins to stick your pins into your moss. You don't need to do all of that. Well, if you do that, then that's going to make your foam too hard to stick your florals in later. So just stick the pin straight into the foam, no glue. cleaning up the desk here a little bit. Okay, so we've got our base going, and so now I want to stick my skeleton in there so that I can build everything up around him. He is really my primary focal point. So I'm just placing him where I think I want him to be, and you'll see that I sit him down here, but I ended up changing him a couple of times, so you're not stuck on one position. You can always move him around if you don't like where he's at. Now I'm trying to figure out how am I going to secure him into the gaps and cracks, because he's not really staying on there. So I noticed that in his pelvic bone there is a couple of holes, so I know that I can secure him that way. So I am getting a little, it's not a skewer, but it's a piece of extra stem, floral stem. So I'm going to cut this in half, and then what you'll see me do is I'm going to make my own little U-pin by bending that in half so that the wire looks like a U, but it is longer than a U-pin. And it's a little more flexible than a U-pin. And I'm going to stick that in there in those holes in his pelvic bone and secure him down into the gaps and cracks. So I will dip the ends of this floral stem into a little bit of glue just to give him some extra security. Once I stick that down into the gaps and cracks, it will stay secure. I'm just measuring, make sure that that's going to work, and it is. Okay, I put one on each side, and now I'm just taking my little pliers and pushing it down extra far so it's definitely secure, not going anywhere. I'm just moving him around a little bit now, trying to figure out where I want his legs and his feet. I want him propped up, one foot on the outside, one on the inside. I'd leave him like that for now, but I will end up changing him later. And then I was experimenting with his hand. Do I want him holding on to the top? How do I want his hands? So again, I don't leave him that way, but it's something that you can do. Now I'm going to snip off this little black cord on top of his head that you can use for hanging him, but we don't need that for this project. Now, I had no idea what I was going to do when I first started. I just knew that I wanted a skeleton. I knew I wanted some sunflowers. And I knew I was going to use this lantern as a base. Other than that, this is all just me trying to figure it out and just taking a little bit of knowledge that I have and figuring how I can make all of this work with what I'm trying to do. Never done it before, so I think that's why you see me fidgeting around with it so much. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our mossy greenery. This greenery, I love it because it's fully wired, and all of these little spikes, you can twist them up and turn them around. You can make them, manipulate them however you want them to be. And so I like to take my finger and wrap the twine around it and then pull it out a little bit, kind of like you do on your ribbons. So just to give it some extra flair and fun. Now you don't have to do that. You can turn them any which way you want to, but this is just what I like to do. Okay, so I know I want a couple of pieces near him towards the bottom, and I'm going to work moving the stem towards him because he is in the somewhat center of this design. And so I'm going to center everything around that center point. This piece is a little fuller, and so I want it to stand up a little bit so that I've got that green moss coming out all over the place. So I'm going to dip it in my glue, and then I'm just going to push it down into the gaps and cracks and into the foam, going as far down as I can. And you'll see me struggle a little bit because I put that glue underneath the gaps and crack to secure it to the foam. So it's a little hard to poke through there. I did get it through, but it took some extra muscles. Now I'm going to take this other piece and I am going to have it come out towards the front, but again, the stem bottom is going to be going in towards the center. So dip into my glue, and then I will push it down into the foam and the gaps and cracks. All right, so I really like this piece of filler. It's big and it covers a lot of area. I know I want it to be an extra interesting piece that, you know, really brings your eyes into the design. So I am going to move it to the back behind him a little bit. It's going to act as extra filler for the back because it does cover up so much area. So I'm just going to dip this in the glue and then go ahead and plop that right there in the back. And you'll see that I am pushing it down lower than the green mossy twigs because I want them to really pop out. Okay, so let's go ahead and start going in with our sunflower. I got these sunflowers at Hobby Lobby. And I'm going to go in with the big pieces first and then fill in with some of the littler pieces. Now, I don't love the leaves on this, but I will tell you I kept them on here because it is going to act as extra filler and cover up some of that floral foam that we did not cover with the Spanish moss. So for that reason, I left those leaves on here. And I'm just going in the back. I want it to be a little bit as high as that beige plant, but you'll see I end up making it, I push it down in the foam just a little bit more. So everything's not exactly the same height. All right, so we're just gonna go around and fill these flowers in. There's no rhyme or reason for me. I don't, do these at a diagonal or a triangle or anything like that. You will see that I put one on the opposite side of the first one. But after that, I really just kind of fill wherever I feel like it. So we'll go ahead and get that done. Now I'm just trying to figure out how I want to put this pumpkin in here. I thought it would be cute to have his leg kind of propped up on it. And then decided that I wanted it more in the center between his legs to cover up more of that moss area. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some Veronica spikes. I really like these because, again, it's something interesting. It can give your project different heights. So I'm going to go in and add some of these around the sunflowers there. Okay, I'm going to speed this up a little bit here and fill in the Veronica spikes and sunflower. Okay, so let's go ahead and get one of these Veronica spike stems, and I'm going to cut that off, and you'll see I'm going to use this here for my pumpkin. I want to secure my pumpkin down, so I'm going to dip one end in the glue, and I am going to put it into the pumpkin in the bottom at sort of an angle. I'm thinking in my head, which way do I want it to go? So you'll see I'm putting it at an angle. And then I'm going to dip the other end of the stem into some glue and then push that down into the foam. Now I'm going to rest his foot up there. I just thought that looked so cute. And his other foot can rest on the side of the lantern. All right, so now we're going to just go ahead and finish filling in with these sunflowers. All right, now I want to use a little bit of this orange spiky filler that I got from Deco Exchange. I'm not going to use the whole bush. I'm just going to use a couple pieces off of it, but I like how it's got the raffia in there, and then this orange will give it a pop of a different color. So you're going to see me, I'm just going to pull off a couple pieces and then place them throughout the design. Okay, let's go ahead and use some red ranunculus. I'm going to use this whole bush. And I'm also not going to use the leaves on this bush because they are more springy green instead of the deep dark green that's on the sunflowers. So I'm not going to use those. However, I am going to pull a couple of these extra leaves off the sunflower bush and put my ranunculus right down in there. So now I've added some of those dark greens to my ranunculus. So let's go ahead and fill this up with those red flowers. Okay, we're going to go in with some tulips. I got these from Michael's. They are more of a cream and an off yellowish color, so I thought it went really well with the fall colors that we're using here. So I'm going to use this whole bush as well, and we're just going around really and filling in some of the spots where you can see some Spanish moss and foam. Again, just camouflaging the base. All right, let's take the rest of this mossy green. I had one piece left. I'm going to split that up into multiple pieces and just use it as a filler and fill in some spaces within my design and around the skeleton. So I just had an aha moment and I decided I wanted to throw some brown twigs. See how those little curlicues in the moss green go around in a circle? I've got some brown twigs like that, so I want to throw some of those in there. I think that will just add a nice bit of interest, and I've been dying to use them. So let's go ahead and throw some of those in there. Alright, I'm going to start working on my bow, and I want to secure this bow with bind wire. That's what this is, it's bind wire. And I'm just going to cut a little piece of it off, and it will go at the back of my bow after I have it made so that I can wrap it around the top of that lantern. I'm just trying to figure out where I want to put my bow. If I want to put it on the side, if I want to put it on the base of the floral foam, or if I want to put it towards the top. And then you'll see me try to measure how big I want my loops to be. And then we're going to hand tie this bow. Alright, so I decided to put it on the top, so I'm just taking that bind wire and wrapping it around that top metal hook, securing this bow right onto the top of the lantern. Of course, you want to fluff out your ribbons and your tails and your loops, do all of that. And I realized after I recorded this that I'm a little out of the screen, so apologize for that, but really I'm just securing this bow on top. So, and then next we're going to go in with our bird. I ended up having to cut the feet off the bird because they were more in the way than anything. So I cut the feet off, and then I'm just going to put some hot glue on the bottom of the bird and secure that right there nestled in my bow. A lot of times you'll see makers put a flower in the middle of their bow, or put berries, or put a bead or a ball or something like that. Same concept, but I'm going to use a bird. I'm just going in, hitting it with some extra glue just to make sure it stays secure. This is where the glue gun does come in handy. Now I'm just trimming some of my tails. Some of them were a little bit longer than what I really wanted them to be for this design, so I'm just trimming off some of those to finish this project up. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel for more how to do fun design tutorials with me. But this is our skeleton and sunflower lantern. Thank you so much for watching.